So you don't have a grain mill right now, and you may be wondering what you can do in the meantime. And maybe you're wondering how you can snag a grain mill for a good deal, or at least a way to afford it. Stay tuned because this video is for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and if you're new, we talk all about real whole grains from a biblical perspective on this channel, and of course we talk about milling your wheat, baking your own bread, all the things. So a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, I actually did a giveaway of a grain mill that I have, the Nutrimill Harvest, and I was actually very surprised how many people commented that they do not have a grain mill. That is such a huge aspect of this channel, is having a way to grind your own wheat, to bake bread, to grind your own grains for various things. And I was just surprised how many don't have an actual dedicated grain mill. So that got me thinking of helpful tips for you guys who do not currently have a grain mill, of what you can be doing in the meantime to consume whole grains on a regular basis. And then towards the end of this video, I'm gonna give you some tips and advice that I have about being able to purchase a grain mill for yourself. So first of all, let's talk about what you can be doing right now to consume whole grains if you do not have a dedicated grain mill. First off, just remember that many grains can be consumed without a grain mill. You have oats, rice, quinoa, remember the beans as well, the entire bean family. You don't need a grain mill for any of those. You can just boil them, soak them, soak them to then cook them, all of those things. Plus, remember that wheat berries themselves can actually just be slightly toasted. They can be eaten raw. My kids actually really like munching on just wheat berries that haven't been cooked or processed in any way. And of course, they can also just be boiled and eaten like you do oatmeal. The next thing to consider if you do not have a dedicated grain mill is you possibly might already have devices in your house that can help you grind up those grains. One of them being a very high-tech, powerful blender. Now I'm talking more about the Vitamix or the Blendtec. A typical blender will not be able to handle the really hard wheat berries to grind up. But I've actually heard from many of y'all who actually use your Vitamix to make flour, to make bread. It is slower, it is extremely loud, but it definitely can be done, and I've actually done it myself. So if you already have a Vitamix or one of those powerful blenders, certainly use that right now. The only thing to consider is, remember, with blenders, they are gonna be much hotter. So you do run the risk of overheating your grains. So be sure to just grind in very small batches so it does it quickly without really heating them up. All right, third thing that you can do, and this is being a little bit creative and possibly not something that many of y'all do, especially because there's not a ton of us, we're definitely not the majority who mill our own grains at home. But do you have friends or people in the area where maybe you could either borrow their grain mill, or they're able to mill up some flour for you for bread baking? Another thing is maybe you just have a baking party. You go over to someone's house who has a mill, you mill up the grains, the wheat for the bread, and you have a big baking party and you bake bread for, say, the week or at least for a few days. If you don't know of anyone in your area, I highly recommend joining Facebook groups that actually are all about milling your grains. There are several out there, and you can just search for them. Just start with milling grains or home milled. There are some that are dedicated to just the mock mill. So there are several groups out there, and just ask, hey, anyone in whatever area you're in, do you have a grain mill that I can maybe come over and mill my grains, or whatever the case may be. This is not the most ideal solution, but hey, you do what you gotta do. Don't neglect your local Facebook groups. So I know many counties or cities or towns have their own like buy or sell groups, or their, where you get your news from. Don't hesitate to ask in those groups. So they're already local. Ask if anybody has a grain mill or is milling their wheat. At the very least, It may strike up some very interesting conversations about why in the world you'd be doing this, and you may meet some great home millers and strike up some new friendships as well. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's give you some tips and advice that I have about being able to afford or even get a grain mill of your own. A few things before I get into this. One thing that I highly encourage you to think about first is this is what I consider to be a very much a necessity for your life. For thousands of years, people definitely considered their grain mills, their millstones, to be necessary for their lives. The Bible even talks about not taking the upper millstone from someone as a pledge because you will be taking their life. So you weren't even allowed to take someone's millstone, the upper stone, as a pledge because it was that serious. People need their millstones, their grain mills to survive. And that's how it was for thousands of years. And then since we handed off our responsibility to big ag or the big flour companies that now grind our wheat for us and strip everything from it, we've since forgotten the necessity of our grain mills. So I highly encourage you that if you do not have one, a way to consume these grains on a regular basis, make it a priority because yes, your life really does depend on it. All right, so first step of being able to afford a grain mill is, first of all, do you remember that certain kitchen gadgets you may just have an attachment that you can order for it. The biggest thing is the KitchenAid. The KitchenAid does have a KitchenAid attachment to mill your grains. Mockmill also has an attachment to the KitchenAid as well that you can order to grind your grains, and that is typically cheaper than a standalone grain mill. So that is an option. Think about if you have already have an appliance that has an attachment. Sometimes those are cheaper than a standalone grain mill. Number 2 advice is buy secondhand if you can find it. So check Facebook Marketplace, check eBay. When I first started 11 years ago, I got Miss Wonder Mill off of eBay, refurbished. So that's why she looks a little wonky. She's refurbished, but she's been doing great ever since, all this time for 11 years. Right now, because the demand is so high, it is definitely harder to find good refurbished or used grain mills, but definitely keep an eye out because that will save you some money. Other things to consider is when you look at websites that sell grain mills, such as Nutrimill or Pleasant Hill Grain, many of them have a refurbished section, not just for grain mills if they sell, mixers, things like that, but they sometimes do have a refurbished section, and if they have any machines that are refurbished, be sure to be checking that out regularly because you can snag a good deal from there as well. And speaking of Pleasant Hill Grain, let's talk about today's sponsor for this video. You've heard me talk about them, I love them, and that is Pleasant Hill Grain. And one of the biggest reasons I love Pleasant Hill Grain is because it's kind of the one-stop shop for everything. Not only are they a small business, which I love to support, they are a family-owned business I also love to support, and they pretty much have anything and everything that you need, especially to get started. Not just for milling or bread baking, but just in general homesteading, homemaking type items. They're the perfect place to choose a grain mill because they pretty much have all of them. And they are the exclusive provider for Como mills. So if you were looking and wanting for a Como mill, you gotta go to Pleasant Hill Grain because they're the only place that you can get it. But bottom line is they're a great place to do side-by-side comparisons. You can see what all that they have. The Mockmill, the Wonder Mill, the Nutrimill Classic, the Nutrimill Harvest. I mean, the Como mills, they have them all. So be sure to check out Pleasant Hill Grains, to shop from a wonderful company, excellent customer service, and I've never had a complaint with anything that I've received from them. Shop with Pleasant Hill Grain, just go to grainsandgrit.com/PHG, and thank you to Pleasant Hill Grain for being a sponsor to Grains and Grit. All right, so back to how to afford a grain mill, some tips and tricks here. So we said the first one, look for used or refurbished, Marketplace, eBay, the refurbished sections on Pleasant Hill Grain, Nutrimill, things like that. And I will have these links in the description box below. But the second thing to consider is if you're patient enough, or maybe you're lucky enough when you're starting to look for a grain mill, is waiting for a sale. Now, grain mills do not go on sale a lot. The only times that I've really seen them go on sale is like the Nutri-Mill Harvest went on sale for Mother's Day. They actually went on a little bit of a sale for Father's Day. The biggest sale that I see through the year is Black Friday. I hate the fact that we shop on a day that we're supposed to be thankful, but it is what it is. And whenever I know of sales going on, definitely be sure to be a member of my newsletter that you can sign up for, because whenever these sales come, that's where I generally announce them first. Again, I do believe that these are very important, and you know, if it's February, a long time until Black Friday, Mother's Day, things like that. And it's also just not a guarantee. Like I said, Black Friday, really great sales, but it really just depends on what you're wanting. But they do go on sale on occasion, so something to consider. All right, number 3, getting creative here with being able to afford one is ask for it for your birthday or anniversary, or if you celebrate Christmas or any other holiday where there's gift giving, ask for it. Now, it's probably gonna be like the only thing, you never know, but if you have very generous family or friends that are willing to do this for you, they are excellent gifts to receive on these times. So don't forget to include them on your wish list. All right, the 4th piece of advice I have for you, this is gonna be some tough love from me. And that is, find ways to save. Make it a priority. If it's important enough for you, you're gonna find a way to do it. Now, I know, I totally get it and understand, and I have been there in my life where literally every penny, every half cent counted. We were rubbing those together. And I know that you can't squeeze blood from a turnip. So here are some ideas of how you can be setting those pennies aside to help you afford a grain mill. Thing is, remember, this isn't like you're buying a car or a house. It's not that big of a purchase. It can be kind of as big as you want it to be. So just remember that. First of all, can you maybe set aside just $5 a week from your grocery budget? You know, scale back a little bit, maybe $1 or $2 a week. Anything and everything helps, where you can start, you know, squirreling this money away, and eventually you're gonna save up enough for it, or at least maybe to help when you can match it with a little bit of extra money. I know everyone says make your coffee at home, don't spend $5 on a coffee at Starbucks. And if you're definitely doing that and saying you can't afford a grain mill, stop buying the coffee at Starbucks and save that money, and you'd be amazed at how fast you can definitely save up money for a grain mill. Other things, and these are things that we've had to learn when we've had a really tight budget, and especially living out in the country. Right now, gas is pretty high. So are you driving a lot more? Because it's possible that you may be able to set aside some money from your gas budget, save some money by not driving around as much. Planning better. Don't be going out every single day if you don't have to. Plan to do shopping trips whenever you're already out, things like that. Again, I'm living, pretty far away from the major stores. So this is something that I already think about, just so I'm not spending, an hour driving every day to someplace. So this is something that's just a good idea anyway. But that's also something, another place that you can save. Another place you can save is, are you eating out a lot? Start cooking more from home. You can save money by not eating out a lot. So, do you have something that you can sell? Look around your house. I'm sure there's something around your house that you don't need anymore, and possibly you can sell it. We have Marketplace, eBay, flea markets, all of those things. Definitely there's something that you can sell. That's another way to make some money too. The bottom line, and this is where the tough love comes, y'all, because I love you and I do believe this is important, but is it important to you? Is this worth making a sacrifice somewhere else so you can do this? Like I said, I 110% believe that this is life. This is worth your life. You think a grain mill is expensive? Try pricing cancer, because I preach on this channel all the time that this is the food that God gave us for our health, for our nourishment. He gave it to us as food. So are you making excuses not to have the food that God has given you? Is it important? And if it is, you'll find a way to get one. And also pray. Pray for this. Again, I know it might sound silly. Why would God care about, me getting a grain mill? I think he does. He compared Jesus to the bread of life. Bread is such an integral part of the Bible. He blesses your bread, all of these things. So yeah, I do think that this is important to the Lord. And he said, ask and ye shall receive. And I do believe that if you are walking with the Lord and you are obeying him, and if you ask as a child of God, you may be surprised how he answers your prayers. All right, so that is it, y'all. Hopefully this video was helpful and an encouragement to you and kind of helped you think outside the box a little bit. Remember to shop at Pleasant Hill Grain, grainsandgrit.com/PHG. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.